Okay, and I want to start something that I found out only last year. Let's see if I can um, get it right. We all know that this parasha will start with Beshalach Paro et ha'am and so on. But here I want to show you that there's two expressions and there's at least two different sects separate, I would call it. Can you see it? Can you see what I'm showing you? No.
No, not
Not
yet.
yet.
You haven't seen it. Sorry. I forgot of that. Okay, now you can see it. Okay, the two different
Yep.
groups, at least in the Chazal, in the Midrash, the four different groups. One group was ready to fight, more right wing. We talked about right wing. One was ready to go back to Egypt. One was ready to shout. One was ready. So at least you can see at least two different, let's say, groups which are really clear, very clear in the text here of the Torah. One is called the Am, and Am is always the, let's say, the lower class, or the ones who were less believing, and the ones who are called Bnei Israel or Israel are the stronger ones. Are the ones who are ready to fight and believe to Moshe and believe to Hashem. You said that we're going to win. Okay, we're going to believe that. And the Am, and that's why I bolded all this long text, if you can see here, in green and in yellow. And you'll see that actually there are two different parts. And I want to get to an interesting conclusion that there was an enormous miracle because of the weaker people. That means, and I've said it over and over again, and I said that already in Sefer Bereshit, that we'll get to this parasha, and I'll show you this example, but we'll see it also in Bamidbar and also in Dvarim. The more the miracles there are, the less privileges we have, which means also today, we were hoping that, okay, for you it's in the morning, for me it's already in the evening. Tomorrow morning or today or whenever it is when the Mashiach will come, I hope it won't be in miracles. It will be slowly and nice.
לילי פיונקלין מרגישים נקיים כמו... לילי פיונקלין, מהטואלט הרך
Who's that?
טכנולוגיות אקלימיות בתחושה.
Whose radio is that?
That was Walla.
We just talked about the left wing. I said so he wanted to show that he's around. So I went back. Okay, good for Walla. He wakes up sometimes. And what I wanted to show is the more the miracles are, the less the privileges are. There are two, I'm just giving you one example. There's a very known example between the Rambam and Rashi. How will the Mashiach will build the Beit Mikdash? Whenever it will be, I hope tomorrow morning, today, tomorrow, after tomorrow, whenever it will be built, the Rashi comes and says in the Gemara that it'll come down by fire. Now that's an amazing miracle, coming down by fire. But we know fire is always dangerous. Fire also burns other people. We know that fire came down on the 8th day, on the when the Mishkan, the tabernacle was declared and started to thing, and it burned 2 people and so on. So when it starts with fire, you never know where it finishes. But the Rambam also says that it's possibility that it will be built by natural causes. That means we'll start building it, we'll put up our sleeves, and I'm ready to put up my sleeves and get dirty and start building. And I prefer not in a natural, in a miracle way, but in a natural way. So I say, always we hope, birachamim, we want it slowly, we want it naturally, we want it without big miracles. Big miracles is afterwards a big toll. And here we'll see that after I've said that, so you'll see what I mean in this way that I'm explaining. Vahi Beshalach Paro et ha'am. Here you can see the word am, which means that he released he decided to release all the people, but especially the Am, and then they were very frightened because I'm jumping over to the next green, and then those people didn't go through the Philistine the short way to Israel, כי קרובו, כי אמר אלוהים פן ינחם העם בראותם מלחמה ושבו מצרימה. Those, let's say, let's call them the Am, which are the simple people, the less believer people, when they will see a war approaching them after they come out of Egypt with the Philistines or with the enemies that will be afterwards, we'll talk about it when we get about Amalek. Amalek, there was a war, but when they'll see a war approaching us, they'll run away, they'll run back to Egypt. So the Am are the less, I would say, believers, the less believing people, and that's why Hashem decided to retreat, make the people go a long way. Vayasev Elohim et ha'am. Again, the word Am, derech hamidbar Yam Suf. But here suddenly comes another part of Israel, and I put that in a different color. And the Torah doesn't need colors. The Torah says Bnei Israel, doesn't say Am. But I colored it and showing you that there were people, and most of the people that came out were more believers and went and were ready to fight. The Chamushim alu Bnei Israel mimitzrayim. I'm not going by the Midrash, Chamushim, that there were only a fifth. The normal explanation is Chamushim, that they with ammunition, with swords, with spears, with arrows, with bows and arrows and so on. Okay, Chamushim, somebody in Mechumash is with ready to fight, ready. Armed, exactly. The word armed is exactly the thing. And
does the word occur any place else?
Yes, there are. There is a Chamushim. I haven't got it now on the thing. If you look up just on Google the concordancia, yes, it does appear. Does appear there. V'chimesh, it's written a verb. V'chimesh. It's yes, not the word Chamushim, but the word v'chimesh. Now I haven't. It doesn't come up clearly in my mind, but there's a few places as a verb, definitely. Anyhow, Bnei Israel, Hashem is ordering that you should carry on. Now, one of the miracles that happened, and I put it in green, which means for the lower class people, in Pasuk Kafbet, Lo Yamish Amud Ha'anan Yomam V'Amud Ha'esh Laila Lifnei Ha'am. That means the fire and the cloud that were guarding Am Yisrael on top of them was because of the Am. Can you see the word Am? Interesting. When we read it, we don't take any difference between Israel and Am. But if I divide it into two and you see the green, so you see here we're talking about there was a lot of miracles that happening occasionally, and more miracles that should have happened because of the people that were frightened. You found the word Chimesh?
Well, okay, so Chamushim as Mizuyanim, Mizuyat Milchama, Yehoshua Aleph, Pasuk Arbasre, Yehoshua Dalid, the Shoftim Zion.
Okay, so you've got over at the beginning, and Shoftim Zion is talking about Shoftim Zion must be Iftach. Okay, okay, so there's a few places where they were Mechumashim. Yes, it's seldom, it's not very much in the Tanakh, but definitely we know that it's armed. Okay, so here one miracle you can see already appears. And here I put it in gray, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. But we'll see that this speaking of Hashem to Moshe will appear 3 times. And the question is, why so many times? Because the first time should have been the last time. That means the first time should have been, Am Yisrael, you ready? Go and fight everybody. Oh, yeah, somebody admitting, probably Victor's coming in. So what I'm saying is, 3 times it's written a command that Hashem is talking to Moshe. And why 3 times? Because it's enough once or twice, which means people were frightened. We'll soon see that Hashem changed the plan because people were frightened. So at the beginning it's written, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, what to do? Daber el bnei Israel, and we're not talking about the simple people, we're talking about the people who believe. V'yashuvu v'yachanu lifnei pi haperot, that means they'll retreat, they'll go back, and they'll show themselves as if they are muddled up, so that Paro will be anxious to go and chase them. But the whole time is Israel, Israel, and the Paro. You, the Israelites, will go back. It's actually going back to the lion's den. You just left Mitzrayim, but you're going back to the lion's den to show that you are courageous and you are ready to fight against Am Yisrael. And that's exactly what Hashem says to Moshe. Don't worry, you will beat them. But suddenly, Paro hears, and I wrote it in green, what I would say the middle class or the lower class people were frightened. Vayugad lemelech Mitzrayim ki barach ha'am. Okay, they run away. That means they were frightened of Egypt. So now to go back towards Egypt, that's really frightening. And I'll soon show you that Paro was right, that he heard the loud speaking people, which were the less, I would call them the less religious people, the less believing people, these people which were the lower class, and they were really frightened. So Paro changed his mind. Instead of letting them go, he's going to chase them. And then I wrote in blue, and you'll see why I wrote it in blue, amazing phrase, Mazot asinu ki shilachnu et Israel rovdeinu. We did a mistake. Why did we release them? Why did I put it in a different color? You'll see who will say exactly the same words in another few verses. Anyhow, Paro takes his 600 chariots. By the way, Sforno, we have to know that one of the commentators is called Sforno, and he explains there were many more chariots than 600. The 600 were only the Bachur, and I've already said it many times, the word Bachur means the chosen ones. It doesn't mean the young ones. In modern Hebrew, it means the young, the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds. No, it doesn't mean. The word Bachur comes from the word Nivchar. They are the chosen, the elite in people in the chariots that were going in front. So the ones which were the elite army, they were the 600 chariots. But behind, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of chariots behind. Okay. So that fits very well. Sforno, it fits very well that what Sforno says, because later we know in the book of Judges, there's 900 chariots. How is it possible that Sisra, that he was a Canaanite, he was a different type of people, and we know all the chariots were invented in Egypt? How did he have more than Egypt? So now by Sforno, it's a good explanation. The 600 only the beginning of the army, but the rest of the army is behind. There's many more chariots. Anyhow, Hashem is strengthening Paro's heart, and we talked about it already, I think, last week. And here again in yellow, Uvnei Israel, I should have also put the Bnei, I'm putting it in yellow. Here, Uvnei Israel, Yotzim biyad Rama, in verse 8, which means they are the strong ones. They are I would say, the determined guys which were ready to really leave Egypt and go and fight against Egypt back again. That's amazing, and that really shows that something special is happening here. Okay? So Bnei Israel, Yotzim biyad Rama, they're going really courageously. But it's not all the Israelites. It's some of them, because later we'll see the Am, which are not going. Anyhow, Egypt is chasing them, and suddenly Paro comes behind them, and we know that it took 7 days, 3 days, he found out that the Israelites are not coming back because they promised to go for 3 days, and the messengers came back together to say that on the 4th day, the 5th and 6th day, they chased them until the 7th day. The 7th day, by the way, what's the 7th day? It's the 7th day of Pesach. That's why we do Pesach a Yom Tov on the seventh day because the big miracle was on the seventh day, of course, the opening of the Red Sea. Anyhow, Paroi Kri became close, Vaisub Bnei Israel, all Israel look behind them and they see that Israelites, that the Egyptians are coming behind them, and also the courageous ones were frightened. But at least they knew to pray. Okay, we're frightened. It's really even as much as ammunition if you have, but you see these chariots, it's like tanks. How can you fight a tank? It's really frightening. So all Bnei Israel, or the righteous ones, the not righteous ones, they were all shouting to Hashem for things. But have a look what's happening now to the ones who are not believing. Vayumru, and it's not written the word am. I wrote in brackets, it's the word am. How do I know? You'll soon see that how I'll know. Vayomru el Moshe, somebody, a group of people came to Moshe, and we'll soon see that they're the ones who didn't believe. Hamebli en kvarim b'Mitzrayim lakachtanu lamut b'midbar. How dare you take us out from Egypt? What, there's not enough cemeteries in Egypt? Mazot asita lanu lehotzianu. You see these 5 words? Who said these 5 words before? Pharaoh said very similar. Mazot asinu ki shilachnu et bnei Israel me'avdeinu. And who does he quote? He quotes the Am. Can you see in green the Am? Here in a few verses onwards, it's written Mazot asinu lanu lehotzianu mimitzrayim. Interesting. They are saying Mazot asita. Why did you take us out? And Pharaoh heard. He heard from messengers. He heard from the people who spied after Am Yisrael. They are weak, and he's using the same words. Mazot asinu ki shelachnu et Yisrael me'avdeinu. That's what strengthened them, because he heard the weak people. Now, that's not common to see the same words a few verses later. And here I also bolded in purple, in pink, whatever color you call it, 6 times they use the word Mitzrayim. Wow. Not 6 times, 5 times they use the Mitzrayim. Wow. They are repeating the word Mitzrayim. I would say Mitzrayim. They're frightened of Mitzrayim. And that's why I say they're the Am. We're talking about the ones who don't believe. Have a look how many times they repeat the word Mitzrayim, 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 which means they're terrified. We already told you in Egypt, במצרים, we don't want to carry on worshipping Mitzrayim. It's better to worship Mitzrayim. How do I know that all this green is the Am? Because it's written in the next verse. Vayomer Moshe, to who does he talk to? Ela Am. So that's why I said here, I put it in brackets, it's the Am, because who's he answering now? Who's talking like that, terrified and really scared of Mitzrayim and repeating the 5 times the word Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim? Vayomer Moshe Am, al tiru yatzvu ut Yeshuat Hashem. Because of you, don't worry, Hashem is going to make a miracle. But again, I say miracles happen when people don't have enough confidence, they don't have enough security, they don't believe enough in Hashem. Part and parcel of believing in Hashem is, even in terrible times, believe that Hashem, in Corona and all things, Hashem will find a solution. So also here, Moshe says, okay, don't be frightened, you'll see that Hashem is going to make you a big thing. Okay, but why does Moshe say that? Only to the ones who are the ones who are in yellow, the Bnei Israel, they were courageous. They were frightened of Mitzrayim, they were shouting to Hashem, they were praying to Hashem, but they knew how to deal with their frightening. You will never see Mitzrayim anymore. Hashem yilachem lachem v'atem tachlishun. You won't have to fight. And that verse especially, I should have also put it in green, perhaps this is also in green, towards who's he talking to? Only the people who are frightened. And here comes the second time. I said in gray, always when Hashem is adding another command. Why does Hashem have to add another command? One of the things that Hashem thought that if they would retreat from the first command and go backwards, it means that actually Paro would be amazed that suddenly these avadim, these slaves suddenly have power and they can go and fight. Yes, they should have fought, and if they would have fought, they would have really won. But here now, Hashem is giving a second command, and the second command is because some of Israel are frightened. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ma titz'ak elai, daber el bnei Yisrael ve'isau. Tell them to go forward into the sea. And we know that's also terrifying. And we can imagine all these slaves never swam in the sea and never had the ability of learning. Hit with the staff the sea. And there'll be a small alley inside the sea, and Bnei Israel will go in there. Again, in the second part, it doesn't mean that the Egyptians will die. It might mean that it'll be now narrow. There'll be a small path inside. The Egyptians will follow Bnei Israel, and Bnei Israel will have more ability of fighting Egypt because it's a small, let's say, tunnel inside the I don't know how narrow that tunnel was, but anyhow, there's more ability of them to fight back the Egyptians. I said again the word fight, not that the sea will come over them. In the second time, Hashem says, put them inside the sea in a small alley, and the Egyptians will chase you, and it'll be easy for you, Am Yisrael, to fight. How do I know that? Let's see. ויבוא בני ישראל בתוך הים ביבשה, ואני הנני מחזקת את מצרים. I'm making again the Egyptians being really stubborn, and they'll chase them, and they won't do any. They won't do the proper judgment, and they'll chase Am Yisrael. Okay, so we'll chase them and chase them. By the word kaved, you'll see that actually the heart is kaved and the chariots are kvedim. Everything is going round the word kaf bet daled. It's already going down. The heart is more heavy. The chariots are heavy. Everything is heavy here. Also, everything goes around it. They'll see that there's a big miracle that Hashem is helping Am Yisrael. Okay, so definitely the angel came between Am Yisrael and the Egyptians, and that's the next part. And here I'm going to show you a verse that repeats itself also twice. The verse is "V'amayim lehem choma miminam u'mismolam." I'll soon explain why. Anyhow, the waters opened in the middle, and Bnei Yisrael went in the middle with a choma, with a vav. Comes the Agon Mevilna and says the first time is talking about Bnei Yisrael, the ones who are, let's say, more religious. They're the ones that believe in Hashem. They're courageous. They've got the ability of knowing that Hashem is doing the right thing. They went in the waters and went frightened. We know Nachshon ben Aminadab jumped in first, and the tribe of Yehuda followed, and the ones who were courageous went in, and that's why the choma, the walls, were very tight, stiff. That means the waters were not moving. It was really a proper wall on the left, a proper wall on the right. I would say it's perhaps, it could be something like chilled, the waters were frozen, and it was like two static walls. Why do I say static? Because the next time won't be so static. Okay, וירדפו מצרים ויבוא אחריהם כל סוס פרעה רכבו ופרשיו, all his chariots, and they're chasing, and they're coming in. ויהי בשמור עד הבוקר וישכב השב למחנה מצרים. I won't explain now everything else. Anyhow, it started to be a bit wet. Some of the waters started to dissolve, or the ice started to be dissolved, and the water was already, it was botsy, it was already full of bots at the bottom, mud, and then the chariots got stuck. ויסר התופן מלכותיו וילגיה וכבוד, ויאמר למצרים, אנוסה מפני בני ישראל, כי השם נלחם במצרים. And I wrote this in yellow because actually the continuation of the miracle didn't have to happen, because already you can see in this state that Mitzrayim were already terrified with all their chariots, and I would say it's like tanks. They were already frightened and they saw the big miracle of Hashem. And I would say that probably like I said, the brave Israelis were ready to go and chase them. But then came the other kind of Israelis that we talked about, the ones in green, the They're not written here, but now we understand that they were frightened and not all Am Yisrael were ready to chase. And that's why there's a third time that Hashem is giving a command. Why is it written a third time? It should have finished now. No, it's not finished because there were people that were still terrified of the Egyptians, even after the Egyptians started already to hesitate. Is it worthwhile fighting Israel or not? You can see, Anusa mipnei Israel, I'll run away from Israel, because some of the Egyptians were already frightened that there is a God, Hashem nilcham lehem b'Mitzrayim, and they know about Hashem, they know about the 10 plagues, so now they know, it's the same God that knows to fight also in water. Wow, so perhaps we have to be really careful and we have to run away. Anyhow, not all the Israelites were like that, and there's a third commandment, and the third commandment is, I'm going to finish everything and not make you fight at all. That means the second part could have been half by Hashem and half by Am Yisrael. I'm reminding you, also in Jericho, there wasn't a complete miracle. In Jericho, the walls fell. But after the walls fell, it's written that Joshua and the people had to go and fight literally with their swords, with their arrows, with everything else. That means it was amazingly a miracle that the walls fell down, but it didn't finish the whole war. The war was by Israel. After the walls fell down, they had to carry on. So that's exactly what happened here, that in the walls, there were 2 walls here, but Israelites should have carried on fighting. They didn't fight. They were frightened. I said at least the minority was frightened. And then Hashem gives the third commandment. The third thing is the waters will collapse back again. That means, I don't know what would happen naturally. Perhaps slowly it will drift down again. But here it will come down as a big miracle because of the people who are frightened. And soon you'll see a couple of more hints about that. Vayet Moshe Yado, a second time, Hashem is commanding Moshe to lift up his cane, and he hits the water again, and the waters come down again. Vayeshuvu hamayim v'yichasu et harechev et haparashim, and we know all that. And here it's written the second time, V'uvnei Yisrael alchu b'yabasha b'toch hayam. Why is it written again? Hamayim lehem choma mimunam. This time the choma is not so strong, because the ones who carried on at the beginning of this tunnel, or the beginning of the passage, were the strong ones, were the brave ones, were the ones who went behind. The waters weren't so in a wall. It was choma like chema. The Gaon Mivilna comes and says the first time it's written with a vav. Can you see the word vav, choma? And here it's written chema, which means they started to be wobbly. The walls weren't so thin, because the people who were walking next to the choma weren't the righteous ones, the ones who came afterwards. Anyhow, we know Vayosh Hashem Vayomo et Yisrael mi'Mitzrayim. We see the word Israel, 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 and they really rejoiced. But have a look at the end. Suddenly it's written here something which is not known. Have a look here, Elaine, a minute. Vayar Israel et Mitzrayim et asfateam. Vayar Israel. It's written Israel, Israel, but suddenly here on the top it's written Mitzrayim Vayiru ha'am. Why are they talking about the Am? Because even so, after this miracle, there's still the lower class of people who didn't believe, the weren't so sure. Only after they saw all the bodies of the Egyptians were swarming the waters and were, I don't know if they were drifting in the waters and they saw them all dead, only then vayiru ha'am et Hashem. It's written here before. Vayar Israel Mitzrayim emet al sfat hayam, vayar Israel et hagdola. Only after they saw all the thing, vayiru ha'am et Hashem, vayaminu ba'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdo. Wow, that means it's not such a big miracle. Only when there was a big miracle, also the Am believed so. And here I've shortened, and I'm carrying on to the whole chapter in 15 is talking about Az Yashir Moshe, Shirat Hayam, the big song. But here I want to indicate two more things that should have happened and didn't happen. What happened was, if Am Yisrael would have fought physically the Egyptians, could you imagine any other people would come to combat against Am Yisrael? They will all be scared, because if the big empire like America, or a big empire like the USSR, the Israelites beat them physically, so who would come against them? And that's what's written here in the middle of the Shirat Hayam, Shamu Amim Yirgazu, Chila Chaz Yoshei Plashet. All the peoples and all Plashet and the Philistines were all terrified. As Nifalu Alefrei Edom, even Esav, Edom on the other side of the Jordan, Moab, and all Canaan, they were all terrified. Yochazon Rad, they were really terrified. We can imagine that if there wouldn't be a miracle, all Am Yisrael would carry on into Israel. Immediately into Israel. That means Plashet, Hashem didn't want to take them through Eretz Plashet. Why? Why in the beginning he didn't take them through Plashet? What did we say at the beginning? They would see war and they would run away. But if they would have seen this big miracle, the Plishtim would run away. They wouldn't be there. They would really scatter away. The continuation would have been, and it's written and people don't see it clearly, and Chazal talk about it. Immediately they would arrive into Eretz Canaan, not 40 years later, not even 1 year later. Immediately they would walk not to Sinai, but walk into Israel. Teviemo v'titaemo. That means I will bring you. The word teviemo. It's
archaic.
It's archaic way of coming, which means to come in. You will come in and you will be put in. Titaemo, from the word neta, you will be planted in where Behar Nachlatcha. Sinai is not Har Nachlatcha. Har Sinai was a very beautiful mountain, and there was a big, amazing thing that the Torah was given there, but it was only for 5 minutes. The main place is Har Nachlatcha, which is of course is Israel, is of course Yerushalayim. Machon leShivtacha Pa'alta Hashem, and immediately if they would have come in, they would have built the word Mikdash, not the Mishkan. Mikdash Hashem konenu yadecha. Unfortunately, the next pasuk, I didn't bring you to the next pasuk, is Hashem imloch leolam ve'ed. What do Chazal say? He will be powerful, but he's not powerful now. Why Hashem imloch in the future? Because if you were powerful, who would they praise? All the peoples in the world? Also Hashem melech leolam ve'ed. No, because you weren't courageous enough. So as if also who wasn't courageous? Also Hashem is not courageous enough. And we know miracles, but after 5 minutes, also Am Yisrael also didn't take any notice of the miracles. They already complained and they want to come back to Egypt. Also the Goyim don't take it as seriously Hashem made big miracles? No, the bigger miracle would have been the natural miracle. What's the natural miracle? Slaves leaving Egypt and fighting with their own force? Wow, they would say that is amazing people. They're not frightened of anybody. Everybody would run away. That's one of the things I wanted to show you today. And now I'll just show you something else soon. But if anybody wants to comment, I understand Victor has joined us, right, Victor? Okay, whoever's here, Elaine, have you got anything to comment?
Oh, I'm just, like, Avi, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
go.
just wanted to say the word Vayaham. It's mentioned again, I think, either when Gideon or somebody else was, or Avinoam was fighting against one
Which word?
of the wars there.
Which word?
Vayaham.
Vayahom.
God
It's
made-
written 7, 8 times. It's written in Shirat David. You are perfectly right. When Hashem is making rumbles in the sky and we probably brought down rain and so on, definitely you're talking about Shirat Vorah, you're talking about David, you're talking about in Arei. There's a whole lecture of that on thing, but you're perfectly right. It's written over and over again. When Hashem fights, he makes miracles, but the main in war is done by the soldiers. Like I said, in Yoshua, Hashem made a big miracle that brought down the walls, but the main part was done by Yoshua and the people. And that's exactly what Hashem was ready to do here. He's ready to help, he's ready, but go and carry on. But there were people that were so frightened, and we know that Moshe said to them, okay, you're frightened, and that's why he says, you won't see Mitzrayim anymore, and you will sit and do nothing, and Hashem will fight for you, which is very nice. It's a nice miracle, but later they had to work very hard against the Plishtim, against the Amalek, and so on. Okay, so that's one thing that okay, thanks, Avi, for adding that on. Elaine, anything else? Because I want to go to the next part.
So I get stuck on here. The first Pasuk Harishon. V'yehi Beshalach Paro et ha'am, v'lo nacham Elokim derech eretz Plishtim, ki karovhu. Now, if you were going to translate that,
okay, I'll tell you what's the word karov. I'll give you all.
La roche karovhu.
Hey, very good. Bravo. It's not ki karovu. It's even that it's karov. It should be lamrot. Many times. Sikel et yadav, ki Menashe abrechov. If Menashe is the big one, so why you're changing things? So the right hand should be on Menashe. Sikel et yadav lamrot Menashe. That means in Yaakov, when he blessed Menashe and Ephraim, so the big one should have the right hand. That's Menashe. So the word ki is many times not because of, but it's lamrot. Lamrot, how would you say that?
Yeah.
How would you say that? In spite of. In spite.
In spite of.
In spite
Yeah.
of. In spite that he was the big one, even so he decided to put the right hand on the small one. So you've got a few places, I've got 20 places like that, but you're perfectly right. So here it's ki karovu, lamrot karovu. Okay, in spite of it, even if it's near, but it's frightening. But they should have understood that they had the power. Hashem would have helped them. So, okay, that's a big thing. And later we suffered 40 years in the wilderness because of this definitely terrifying thing. Okay, one more thing that I want to show you is, there's a lot of things, but we'll go to the end of the parasha. We'll go to the end of the parasha. Okay, the end of the parasha is talking about Amalek. I won't have time to show everything. I'll just show you one more thing. Okay. This is right at the end of the parasha is talking about that they did fight. Who did they fight? Against Amalek. But have a look in green, and you'll see all the verses which are written right at the end of the parasha in Beshalach, that all these words that I've bolded in green is talking about how they fought against Amalek. Vayavo Amalek vailachem. Amalek comes to fight. And then Bechar, and then Hashem says to Yoshua, go and choose people, Anashim. and then machar. The word machar always appears about Amalek, always tomorrow. By Purim, soon is going to be Purim, we'll see that machar, anikaru, the word machar appears always again and again, and also Mordechai tells Esther about machar. Nitzav al and kaved and vayashev ad bo hashemesh. Why am I giving you all these words? Because the same words appear immediately at the next paragraph. The next paragraph is not what we're going to read on Shabbat. We're going to read the next Shabbat is in Yitro. After Beshalach is going to be Yitro. And all these words are appearing again. So here, for instance, at the beginning it's written, Vayavo Amalek Vaylachem. Amalek came to fight. What's written about Yitro? Vayavo Yitro, and later it's written Leshalom. Exactly the opposite. And then it's written Bechar, Anashim, choose people. That's exactly what says Yitro. He gives a good answer to Moshe, Bechar Anashim, and choose people, Vayivchar Moshe Anashim v'chulei. And all these words are written exactly the same.
Also, kaved mimcha hadavar.
Again.
In chapter 18, verse 18, Navol tibol ki gam ata v'gam ha'am hazeh asher
Navol tibol, you will.
Ki kaved.
Very good.
So again, the root kaved.
The kaved and the kaved, exactly. I wrote it there in green here. Very good. And then you got Anshei Vayivchar Moshe. Anyhow, what is the big idea? The big idea I wrote here in the blue on the right, on the left. There is two peoples that are always next to each other, Amalek and the Kaini, through the whole Tanakh. Kaini are part of Amalek. They were a family, but they were the outsiders. And always the Kaini were good to Israel, the Amalek were the worst to Israel.
Wait, so who's Kaini here? Yitro?
Who's Kaini? Yitro. One of his names is called Kaini. He is Michever HaKaini. And it's
but we get that from Judges. No, we get that from.
We get.
1 Samuel 15. Shmuel Aleph.
Nachon.
Who was a lady, a woman, Eshet Chever Akeni?
Okay, Yael, you're very good. Thanks very much. Everywhere. I won't go into it, but now also when Bilam curses Am Yisrael, at the end, he tries to curse, but at the end he gives eitzes to Balak, and he talks about 4 different kinds of peoples. When he talks about Amalek, he'll tell Balak, Amalek will be ruined by Am Yisrael, but the ones who are going to get the most best profit out of Am Yisrael are going to be the Kaini. Wow. So again, Amalek opposite the Kaini. So all the verses which are bad, all the phrases which are bad against Amalek are the other side of Yitro. Yitro, which comes from the Kaini. By the way, Chazal says something interesting, that Yitro at the beginning was one of the ministers, the war leaders of Amalek, and then he saw that Mitzrayim left, so he left also Amalek. So he came to be from the worst people to the best people. He became the father-in-law of Moshe. We know that. Okay, so all this is parallel. I'll just say one more thing, that why did Amalek come? Amalek came because Am Yisrael asked a most terrible question. Hayesh Hashem bekirbainu im ein. Is God with us or not? I started at the beginning and said, part of Am Yisrael are the ones who don't believe. You can call them Erev Rav, and they did a lot of problems later in the 40 years of Am Yisrael in the wilderness. It's probably talking about these part of Am Yisrael. It's not the all Am Yisrael. And they asked, Hayesh Hashem bekirbeinu im ein. They're suspecting if Hashem is really ruling Am Yisrael after the 10 plagues, after splitting the Red Sea. You still are not sure that Hashem is with you? So then comes Amalek. I wrote here, Amalek, by the way, is the same gematria, the same worthy and number worthy of Safek. You don't believe instead of emunah, so you're in Safek. So will somebody come and punish you because you are really in Safek? So that's, I've got a lot to say more and more, but I'm just giving you the beginning of Am Yisrael coming out of Egypt. If they were more courageous, the Amalek wouldn't come to them. Nobody would come to them because everybody would see these are courageous people. These are people who believe in Hashem. But Amalek came, saw that, like Pharaoh, saw that they are hesitating and not so sure in Hashem's way. So also Paro says, why did we release them? Also Amalek started to fight, and afterwards the rest of the peoples also weren't so frightened from Am Yisrael. Unfortunately, that was one of the wrong things of Am Yisrael at the beginning. Today, I think we're a bit more, a bit more courageous as Jews. We're a bit more stronger like that. Okay, any more to say, because I can carry on, but the time is already come up.
Right. Okay.
Yishar koach to you all. Okay, Victor, Yishar koach that you had what you had. You disappeared, but you're there.
I just wanted to add something, if I may.
Definitely, go.
I've heard a while back at Dvar Torah from somebody, I don't remember, about Hashem yilachem lachem vatem tacharishun. Harav Kook at the time was very much trying to give courage to the kibbutzim and people that were growing things. So he says, Hashem yilachem lachem, God will give you bread if you will tacharishun, you will plow.
Lachosh. Will plow the thing. Charishun means be quiet, or means plow, carry on. There's a lot of vote. I didn't know it's a Rav Kook, but there's a lot of people who come and say drashot about the Charishun. Okay, it fits with the Rav Kook because he wanted to plow the ground. Charish is also not to be quiet. It also means to dig. Okay, Yishar Koach. See you next week, please, God.
Thank you.
God.